Thomas's Friendship Adventures, Episode 4, Saving Henry. It was springtime on the island of Sodor. All the engines were busy, carrying goods and passengers. They cheerfully chuffed up and down the lines. All except Henry. Henry was worried. He wheezed as he puffed, and steam hissed out of his cylinders. One morning, Sir Topham Hatt came to Titmuth's sheds. He had an important job for Henry. A special delivery of fruit and vegetables are coming to the docks today, he told him. I want you to take it to Knapford. Yes, sir, said Henry, but he was worried about his wheeze. It felt worse today. Thomas and Percy, you two are to go to the docks and shun Henry's freight cars. After that, you can carry on with your usual jobs. Yes, sir, said Thomas and Percy. Thomas, Percy, and Henry puffed to the water tower. Henry tried to stop wheezing, but he couldn't. What's the matter, Henry? Asked Thomas. You don't sound well. I can't seem to get up steam properly, said Henry, but I'll manage. Don't tell anyone, Thomas. That goes for you too, Percy. Thomas and Percy weren't sure about this. I don't want Sir Topham Hatt to know, hissed Henry. Thomas and Percy could see that Henry was worried, so they agreed. They hurried off to shun Henry's freight cars, and Henry followed slowly to the docks. Henry was very worried. What if he was too weak to pull his train? He would be of no use to the railway, and he wouldn't be a really useful engine at all. Henry shuddered at the thought. Must keep going, he wheezed fearfully. At the docks, Thomas and Percy had shunted Henry's freight cars into place for him. Soon Henry was coupled up and ready to go. Go on, Henry, chuffed Thomas. You can do it, puffed Percy encouragingly. Henry puffed and pulled his hardest, but the train barely moved at all. I'm sorry, Thomas and Percy, Henry wheezed miserably. I'm not a really useful engine anymore, so Topham Hatt will have to send me for scrap. Thomas and Percy were upset. They wanted to help Henry. Then Thomas had an idea. Percy and I will do our other jobs first, he said. Then we'll pull the train for you. Henry watched Thomas and Percy puff away. He wasn't sure if it was right to let them do his job. Thomas and Percy needed to do all their other jobs as quickly as possible, so they had time to pull Henry's train. One of their other jobs was shunting troublesome trucks at the quarry. Hurry up, Thomas told the troublesome trucks. What for? They snapped. For Henry, puffed Percy, and they biffed them as hard as they could. Henry waited sadly by his train. He hoped Thomas and Percy would come back soon. When all their jobs were finished, Thomas and Percy hurried back to collect Henry's train. Henry was very pleased to see them. Don't worry, Henry, said Thomas. We'll soon have your job done in no time. You go back to Titmuth and we'll meet you there later. Thank you, Thomas and Percy, wheezed Henry. And Thomas and Percy pulled away with a long line of freight cars. Thomas and Percy were tired. They'd been working hard all day, and Henry's train was very heavy. But they were both determined not to let Henry down. Sir Topham Hatt was talking to James when Thomas and Percy puffed into the station. Thomas, Percy, this train is late, he said crossly. And why are you two pulling it? Where's Henry? Thomas and Percy didn't want to get Henry into trouble. They had to think of an excuse. Henry took on the wrong sort of coal, sir, started Thomas. The wrong sort of coal? What nonsense, Thomas. I'll find out what Henry has to say about this later. So Topham Hatt was very cross. He gave Thomas and Percy another job to do. Yes, sir, said Thomas and Percy. James steamed across the countryside. He found Henry having a rest in a siding. "What's all this about the wrong sort of coal?" he asked. Henry was puzzled. "The wrong sort of coal?" James told him all about Thomas, Percy, and Sir Topham Hatt. Henry felt bad. He wanted to put things right. He decided he must go and see Sir Topham Hatt straight away. Henry hissed and wheezed his way to the station. His fire felt feeble, and his wheels felt weak, but he battled on. At last, Henry puffed into the station, and there was Sir Topham Hatt. "It's all my fault, sir," he said sadly. "I asked Thomas and Percy not to tell you I couldn't work. I was afraid of going for scrap. I'm very sorry. I should have talked to you this morning." "You shall always tell me if you have a problem," said Topham Hatt. "You are a loyal, hard-working, and really useful engine. I will send you to the repair yard straight away. You'll soon be as good as new." Henry was relieved, and Thomas and Percy were tired from their extra work. But they all agreed, even though it's hard, it's always best to tell the truth.